What the LHD, the Large Hadron Collider, is trying to do, and we're looking inside that 27-kilometre long tunnel in that photo there, is replicate the conditions immediately after the Big Bang, not before it. And this is important. Why? Because science has no reasonable explanation of how the particle that exploded in the Big Bang came to be. It just was. And at this point, science and religion sound identical. We say God just was, they say an eternal particle the size of a pinhead just was. Science all but ignores eternity prior to the Big Bang and instead says, yeah, but at some point the matter that always existed exploded and formed everything we have in the universe. And that's what we want to prove by showing that matter can form when subatomic particles explode, and that's what this particle collider is about. It's about smashing together subatomic particles. So no, this experiment can't disprove God, because even if it proves what they're desperately hoping it will, that matter can burst into being, well, that's what Genesis has said all along. In fact, as astrophysicist Robert Jastrow said, the Big Bang has such a striking resemblance to the words of Genesis 1:3, and God said, "Let there be light," that scientists should sit up and take notice and even be a little worried. But we're jumping ahead. First, what exactly is this theory called the Big Bang? Well, the term, ironically, was coined by a guy who didn't believe in it, Fred Hoyle. He was an astrophysicist and an atheist who, to his dying day, rejected the idea, but is now best known for the Big Bang because he was the one who gave it that name out of ridicule on a radio interview. The theory itself was developed by a Catholic priest named George Lemaitre, who proposed that an object the size of a coin, small coin, some say it may have been as big as a basketball, some say a pinhead, exploded and created matter that expanded rapidly into everything we now have in the universe in about a millionth of a second. And that's basically it. The expansion of galaxies since that time that we see through the Hubble telescope, and a lot of people attribute the Big Bang to Hubble because the telescope recorded the expansion of galaxies going out, but it was actually Lemaitre, not Hubble, who came up with the idea. That suggests, they say, that at one time, 14 billion years ago, if they're expanding, they were all actually down into one little tiny pinprick. Really, really dense, heavy pinprick. Now, Hoyle respected Lemaitre, but he rejected the theory because the idea of the universe having a beginning implied a cause, and a cause implies a cause giver or a creator. And now, while Hoyle was initially unwilling to go there, like many scientists, he eventually saw the design in the universe as evidence for a designer. And he put it this way, listen to this. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics. There are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. And that from an atheist. Now, since he was unwilling to accept God as the answer to that question, the super intellect behind it all, he proposed other answers. Aliens, a theory called quasi-steady state cosmology, but other physicists went for the Big Bang. The priest's theory that everything had a beginning, expanding from a single point called the singularity. Their dilemma was, and is, and this is where we get to the experiment, everything in physics has an equal and opposite. A positive charge has a negative. A force one way has the equal force the opposite. So the matter, we're doing science here, but stick with me, so the matter that expanded at the Big Bang into our universe must be matched somewhere by antimatter. Okay? Something they're hoping to create in the LHC. Their theory, one of the theories, is that maybe an anti-universe exists side by side our universe. It's out there stuff, I tell you. But so was the idea of the Earth being round, which, by the way, the Bible had said long before science caught up. Interesting one. So, perhaps their discovery of antimatter will simply be science's way of catching up with what the Bible has said all along. That there's a spiritual reality side by side, our physical matter reality. Also, this matter that expanded somehow found mass, all the stuff around us. Where did that all come from? And that was unexplainable without God. And so in 1964, physicists proposed a new element that you may have heard about in the news this week called the Higgs boson particle, also called the God particle, to try to explain how matter might gain mass from nothing. That there was some miraculous particle that caused it. It's the only explanation science can come up with. The God particle is yet to be seen or proven, but it's another thing that CERN, CERN, is really hoping to observe in the experiment that's going on starting this week. They're hoping to get a photo of God, basically, of the God particle. In a nutshell, what they're doing is firing a stream of protons, which are subatomic particles, clockwise through this 27-kilometre circuit tunnel at near the speed of light. And that started on Wednesday. And another beam going counterclockwise. And then in the coming weeks, they'll cause these two streams to collide inside a giant detector called ALICE, which stands for something, but I forgot to write it down. This is ALICE. And that collision, for about a millionth of a second, will be 100,000 times hotter than the core of the sun. And this will, they hope, cause an explosion that will separate subatomic particles into what they call quarks, which has never been done. We always thought the atom was the smallest. Now we're saying, no, there's more. We can get down further. And that's what they're hoping to explode. And maybe, hopefully, using this giant solenoid, they'll capture the universe at its most basic, as matter and antimatter. Physical and spiritual, if you like. And see this thing called the God particle. Science becomes very religious when you get to this level, doesn't it? Two sides of the same table. You see what I mean? We're looking at the same thing from different angles. Of course, where the original particles of matter came from has never been explained, or how they exploded in such a perfectly designed way to form all of this. And that's something this experiment can't even begin to answer and isn't even trying to. It's interesting. Something Julie pointed out this week. This machine took 20 years of construction, 50,000 scientists to design, $16 billion to build. It's the largest and most intricately designed machine in the history of the universe. Biggest machine ever. To try to show what? How the universe happened by no design. Hasn't its mere construction already proved what they're hoping to disprove? That there is a designer, you know? If it's taken all of this just to recreate the most basic element in the universe, what kind of power and intellect did it take to create the universe? Now, doomsday fears circulated this week. You may have heard about them, because some were saying this experiment could create a black hole that will suck the Earth into it. Some suicided as a result this week. Science has never been a great provider of hope. And that's one reason I prefer to sit on Scripture's side of the table. I don't find great hope from particle colliders. Neither do I find the Bible's account of the table, Genesis, unscientific. Certainly no more than CERN's talk of God particles. Not that it was written as a scientific record, understand, which is why I'm no placard-waving creationist, because I don't believe the Bible is a science textbook, okay? It wasn't written to explain the how of creation. It was written to point to the who of creation. That's what the Bible's about.